So how am I going to use the last 57 weeks of information, which are tools, to minister to someone? How am I going to share that? Who likes information? I love information. But after a while, what do you do with the information? I have about 300 or 400 books sitting in my little bookshelving stuff over there. After I read it, I don't know what to do with it. It just sits there. It's information. Well, that's fine, but you're supposed to do something with the information. Hopefully that's why you read something. This, I just constantly read. Books, I read it, it's like, okay. This, I constantly read. Last 57 weeks, you have this tied to current events that talk about this. So how are you sharing it with someone? This is the who, what, where, when, why, and I didn't put in there, I think I put how. I didn't put how in there. Not that it's not important. So who are you sharing this information with? Who? Now, you don't have to say Bob, Karen. I'm just, for you, that's why you got a sheet to write down. Who are you sharing this with? So you can come up with a boss, right? An employee, someone you work with. Mom, dad, sister. Well, no, I can't talk to them about biometrics. You have 57 weeks of information on 24 pages on an average. There is something to talk to someone about, right? So, but first you have to do, this is part of the writing things down, measurable, testable, observable. You have to actually say, who is there in my life that I can actually speak to that needs to know this? Now, what you don't want to do is limit yourself to someone who's a non-believer. You want to expand it to someone who is a believer who can actually share with somebody else too. So on Sunday mornings, I'm primarily preaching to the believer. You can actually share with a believer what you heard in order for them to share with a non-believer, or for them to share with another believer. But at some point, you have to share with a non-believer. If not, your book's on a shelf. They're just books on a shelf, and they're not in use. So I'd love, now you don't have to do it tonight, but if you want to, start right now. Who is it in my life that's unsaved that I actually talk to? Well, I don't talk to them every single day. We're gonna go over that too. How many, let's say for instance, Lois, how many friends do you have on Facebook, roughly? Roughly. Pick a number. A couple hundred. I don't expect you to write down a couple hundred names right there on who, but one of those, whom, is a Facebook. And we're going to talk about how to use that in a second. So what? What am I sharing? Specifically, we're talking about creation science right now, but you got 47 weeks. So I'm just talking about the 2 Bible studies. You can add other things in there. I'm just talking about the things that you've actually been studying and have notes for. Some of them are just quick paragraph hits. Some are 2 paragraphs. But something that you know, if you're listening to this and you look at it, you study it, you just, interesting. It may not even perk your interest to it's like, who cares? Something go, oh my goodness, So what are you going to share? You're going to share what? My notes. You're going to share the Bible. You're going to share creation. Write down, what are you going to share? Well, I'm just going to share Jesus. How are you going to share Jesus? What? What are you going to share about Jesus? Well, I'm just going to share my testimony. Fine. Will that do it? I don't know. So what are you going to share? Well, like I said, we're talking about creation science, and 1 out of every 2 people believe in evolution. So what? I would talk about creation science. Where? Where do you share this with? Where? Where would you share current events, creation science, end times? Where would you share that at? Work. Where else? Home? Restaurant? Are they? As you're getting your hair cut. You have a captive audience. When I get my hair cut, I'm very nice to the person cutting my hair. Aren't I, Agnes? I'm very nice. You always want to be nice till after it's done. But if you're getting your hair cut, it's one-on-one. If you are the hair cutter, oh my goodness. All you have to do is stop cutting their hair. Just talk. Right? I mean, so where? At work. Think strategically, where am I going to share this? Where? How about Facebook? Stop thinking about places. See, we're multimedia people, aren't we? 90-year-old people text. If George Burns were alive today, he'd be 128. He would be tweeting. He would. He's just that type of guy, right? All these people tweet. All these people, they got their Facebook pages. They follow them on Twitter. They have all this stuff right there. Why aren't we using that? So where? Don't limit yourself. So, okay, restaurant, home, work. No, where am I supposed to? Okay, so when? When do you share information with people? You got 6 lines there. It's a kind of a trick question. When? All the time. Okay, all right. So there's a little trick question. All the time. Well, I'll just share Jesus between 9 and 10. I'm in bed by then, but okay, so why would you share? To reach the lost. Why should we why should we feel more compelled now than ever? Time is short. Time is shorter than yesterday. Time is shorter than when we started. How? How are you going to share this? We did the where. How? Jasmine, a couple weeks ago, I talked about how you shared, right? On Facebook. She just throws a question. It was really kind of an innocent, but it wasn't. She said, my kids will never watch Nickelodeon Junior because they said the earth was billions of years old. Instantly, she got a response. Joshua 1:8, we've been studying that on Sunday mornings. It said, God's word shall not stop coming out of my mouth. And I'm going to keep reading it, and I'm going to keep doing what it says in order I may prosper, be wise, and what? Be successful. I want to be successful on the how, so he's going to give me wisdom. You actually have to sit down and figure out, how am I going to reach people? What kind of a question could I throw out there? Has anyone got there? Who's had a birthday lately? Who's had a birthday lately with family, and their family? Didn't you have Ronan? Was it Ronan? All family gets together, right? All Chalky's side, your side. How do I throw something out there? Hey, how old do you guys think the earth is? What do you guys think about dinosaurs? Those are little conversational starters, aren't they? Well, who would talk about that? At what point are we going to start talking about it? I'm telling you, this is going to lead right to, it's like, I don't know, I guess I never really thought about it. 1 out of every 2 people believe in evolution, and then a lot of Christians don't believe that the earth is 10,000 or 6,000 years old. They believe it's 10,000 years or older, and they believe in a portion of evolution. So how are you going to do this? Throw something out on Facebook. Throw a link out on Facebook. One thing I'm working on right now, it's kind of, I'm trying to take 5-minute clips out of, I'm trying to take 4 to 5 5-minute clips out of each Wednesday so you can refer to it on YouTube. So that it'll say, biometrics, here's 5 minutes. All you have to do is say to someone, hey, do you guys know about 666? You see somebody walking with 666 across their knuckles, right? That's probably most of your friends. Okay. Who knows who Ozzy Osbourne is? Come on, I want you to raise your hand. I want to see. Okay, Jerry, start the song. Okay. All right. Sorry. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne still put 666 across his knuckles. They're tattooed. Do you guys know that? Anybody who's my age or a little bit younger, a little bit older, they know Ozzy Osbourne. You hear an Ozzy Osbourne song on the radio, Oh, dude, that guy, oh, man, that guy, man, he's whacked. Oh, man, yeah. Did you know that he believed, oh, yeah, that 666 stuff? Oh, my goodness. Do you know what that really means? What does 666 stand for in the Greek? Christine, I think you have it. Xi Sigma. Xi Chi Sigma, right? Chi Xi Sigma. Chi, Christos, right? The cross. Xi is the emblem or the symbol of Allah. Sigma is the number of man. The Bible says in Revelations that know and understand, anybody with understanding, let them understand the symbol and the image of the beast. It doesn't say the number of. That's a translation in 1611. The original translation says something else. There's your shoe-in right there. I'm just giving you examples. We have to be creative. Goes back to Sunday, right? If I want to buy a house, if I want to own a house, if Josh and Ashley want to rent a house, they're going to figure out how to rent one. They might come up with some obstacles along the way, but they're going to figure out how to do it. So how bad do you want to witness to somebody? If it's your priority, you're going to figure it out. Well, I know some families coming over today, and guess what? They're Catholics. Man, what am I going to say? I'm going to have some current events about the Pope, see what they have to say. I'm not going to bash the Pope. I'm going to say, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, did you know that everything that he's saying comes from the Apocrypha, the other 14 books, and not the Bible? Oh, I didn't know that. Why? Because they're being read to every week. They actually don't read the Bible. Ask most Catholics, they do not read the Bible, they get read to. So the only thing they retain and the only thing they know are the things that are of repetition. I'm not making fun of right now, I'm just telling you that's the statistics. You can take it from the Pew poll or the Gallup poll. This is what it says. The Catholic Church, they don't know the Bible. They know catechism stuff, which is from the Apocrypha. So all of a sudden, throw out 4 or 5 things to them, make them think. Well, they're Catholic, so it's not going to work. Got to be creative. You got to start thinking outside the box here in a little bit and say, well, I'll just bash them over the head and say they need to be saved. Why? Well, I have some friends who got saved 23 years ago and they don't care anymore. Why wouldn't you talk to them about once saved, always saved? Why would you not mention that to them? Is it starting you guys thinking a little bit? Just hopefully? Creation science, I mean, it's very easy. The news. Jerry, what happened in the news? What did they find off the coast of Southern California this week? A really, really big sea serpent, snake, fish thing. You guys, Robert Van Winkle, he's the weatherman on channel whatever, right? Channel 247, one of them. He talked about that last night? That's how they ended the news last night. They talked about, man, did you see this big thing? I wanted that. They said it's prehistoric. And he said, well, no, there's a big ditch that runs along the side of Southern California. It's about 3,000 feet deep. He goes, there's stuff in there that's so old that no one sees anymore. This is the weatherman. He's saying this on TV. He goes, there's prehistoric stuff everywhere still existing. He goes, I'm surprised more stuff doesn't wash up on the shore. Huh. It's everywhere around us. Now all of a sudden you're saying, hey, did you watch the news last night? Robert Van Winkle, he talked about some prehistoric animals. Do you guys know what prehistoric means? No. Hey, did you see the creature? It's all over the news. It's on CBS, NBC. It's all over that they found this thing. It's like, we have no idea what this thing is. We know it's got to be millions of years old because no one's seen it. How can it be millions of years old? It would be gone. It doesn't live that long. So there's stuff that's still going on there. They haven't seen it in a long time, but it's still down there. So how am I supposed to talk to someone? Watch the news. Watch the weather. It's there. It's everywhere. All this news comes in. Now you have to talk to someone and say, man, I like Robert Van Winkle. He's so sharp. He's so nice. His hair's so, he's a little gray, but oh, man, he always looks so good. Yeah, do you watch his? Oh, yeah, I love Robert Van Winkle. Did you know that when he signs, he signs off, it's to a family member who's deaf? Do you guys know that? I mean, you have a shoe in with anything. You see, so you have someone who's a family member, a friend who's deaf, right? All of a sudden, you bring up Robert Van Winkle's name. There's your shoe in. Now you take. Oh, by the way, Robert Van Winkle mentioned this the other night about this prehistoric animal, and all the people at the thing started laughing about it. And they start talking about how old this animal was. All of a sudden, you have a conversation going. Where does that lead to? It always leads back to Christ. there's a neighbor of ours, Dave DeStefano. And Inez, I know you met him. Our neighbor. Yeah. Christine, you met him. And they're moving. They're moving to Fort Lauderdale. They're moving at the end of the month. They've been with us in their same building for a little over 2 years. He's not a believer. And I've thrown a lot of seed down. I've spent a lot of time with him, but I was kind of like, okay, God, I've released. How many more times can I go out? The guy just said, okay. So in the last week, he's leaving, so he's kind of talked to me. He goes, okay, hey, I'm leaving. Man, we're going to miss you guys. So he's taking the dogs out to do their thing. And 2 days ago, I spent 45 minutes with her. One thing led to another about Fort Lauderdale, about this and the type of this and the type of this, and went from his car, and I kept trying to direct it. Every time he mentioned something, I tried to. So finally, something came up about a friend of his who's an alcoholic. Started talking about drinking. And his friend is a born-again believer, goes to church and smokes pot and gets hammered every single weekend. And he said, so what do you think about that? It only, like I said, I just had to sit there and look at his dogs, and his dogs licked my legs, which freaks me out. And they just licked me, did this whole thing, and I'm standing there go, oh, Jesus. It's like, Dave, seriously, the whole time I'm going, okay, Dave's going to hell if I don't do something. And I'm just sitting there going, this freaks me out. And then finally, when he said that, what do you think about that? I went, shoo, just right in. And he goes, well, I think it's wrong to drink that much. I said, okay. And he goes, see, we only drink this much. And I go, oh, okay, so there's differences. And he goes, well, yeah, does the Bible talk about that? I go, matter of fact, it does. I said, but let's not talk about alcohol right now. Let's just talk about sin in general. I said, so you think you can do something a little bit and it's not that bad, but somebody who does a little bit more, it's more sin. I said, the Bible says you sin one, you broke one, you broke them all. He goes, what? Raised in the Catholic Church. 45 minutes later, he was in tears once. And he said, can I get together with you before I leave? I have a lot more questions. It went from one thing in the Bible to marriage, about how a marriage is supposed to work, how you're supposed to love each other, how you're not supposed to give up on marriage. You just got married not even 2 years ago. I did his parents' renewal vows and witnessed to his dad 3 months before his dad passed away. If you don't get involved in people's lives and figure out how you're going to be a witness to them, what are we doing? Because you're taking all this information in and just like, okay, I don't do anything with it. So, boy, but man, I can't wait to get home to tell everybody. We got to do something with it, right? We got to do something with it. So when we go through this tonight, we'll probably get through half of it. Think about who do I know that I can share this with about creation science? And Jerry, I can't believe I lost connection again. I'll edit that part out where I get really mad and frustrated. About the dogs licking me, that was so sick too. All right, Jerry, can you keep going? Keep going. Go through all the scripture verses. Stop right before you do the last scripture verse. Get 2 more slides. That one and one more. Keep going. There we go. All right. Who's this? Okay. It's the Clampetts. What are they known for? Oil. They are known for oil. Okay, the next slide, Jared. Who's this? So we got the Ewings, Dallas. Who's the guy not in the middle, but one to the right of the middle? Wow, who's the guy on the far left in the cowboy hat? How about next to him with no cowboy hat? How about next to Bobby? Victoria Jackson? She's from Saturday Night Live. Victoria Principal. Wow. I am impressed with your guys' knowledge of nighttime soap operas. All right. Okay. Did you know, once again, we're talking about age of the earth, right? Do you know when they drill down in the ground, they hit oil? Do you know when they drill, they hit oil? You all know that, right? That's where they get oil from? They don't manufacture it. They have to drill for it. Oil is under incredible pressure. It comes squirting out of the ground like a big zit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it does. If you puncture the spot, there's a layer of rock. Once they get to a certain point, as soon as you puncture the layer of rock, it just shoots out, right? It doesn't look like the little bubbling like the Beverly Hillbillies. They just did it because no one wanted to get dirty. How it can become bubbling crude? It just shoots out because there's so much pressure. It's 20,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. If you have a power washer, homemade, not your home, the power washers for your home are probably 1,800 max. If you get them from Home Depot, commercial ones are 3,000. This is 20,000 PSI. It'd rip your skin right off at 5,000. The guys who stand on top of the soil, petrologists say that rocks cannot handle that pressure for more than 10 to 15,000 years. It's impossible for oil to be pushed up against the layers of rocks underneath the ground without the rocks just crumbling and oil just shooting out everywhere. It's impossible. These are scientists, petrologists. That means they study rocks. The rocks should have all cracked. So everywhere you go, if you go across in Texas, there should just be stuff just shooting out of the ground everywhere. Right? Because if the pressure can only be for 10,000 years, and the earth is how many years old? 4 billion? Shouldn't everywhere we go just be oil just shooting out of the ground? It's like, we'd all be rich. You know that? Can you imagine? I was walking home today. I got hit by 3 oil wells. It was crazy. And it was just awesome. But this is what happens. So, where did the oil come from that's still under pressure? Where did the oil come from that's still under pressure? Where does oil come from? Plants and animals. If plants and animals, and it can only be 10,000 years, max, so something happened with plants and animals less than 10,000 years ago. Scientists agree on this. Scientists agree, agnostics, atheists, evolutionists believe that this is how oil is created. It builds up over pressure, but it's a max of 10 years before the rocks break. So if the pressure can only last 10,000 years, why is there still pressure down there? All scientists agree where oil comes from, plants and animals. Next slide, Jerry. You guys ever heard of Sinclair oil or Sinclair gas? It's more of like Georgia, kind of like a Midwest, Mississippi. Sinclair oil gas is kind of like Exxon or whatever. They just, gas stations everywhere. What's their mascot? Dinosaur. What's the next slide, Jerry? That's on there. That's all their stuff still? Is a dinosaur. They believe that their oil comes from animals. And they believe it comes from dinosaurs. He believes there was a flood. There's dinosaurs everywhere. Gas dinosaurs everywhere. They still have their logo. People think dinosaurs got squished and turned into oil. And they did. But people believe it happened 80 million years ago. Right? It's impossible. Because oil pressure can only be held back by rocks for 10,000 years max, according to science. Not theory, according to science. Their theory is 80 million years. Their science says 10,000 years. So they look at what is true and say, I believe that's false. Why? Because they don't want to believe it's true. Are y'all following this? Okay. So here's my theory. I believe that the earth is 6,000 years old. I believe 4,400 years ago there was a flood. Everything drowned except for the animals that were on Noah's Ark. The sedimentation, when everything moved back and forth, because the changing of the tides as the moons went back and forth and everything was shifting, it kept rolling back over the animals, and the animals kept getting tucked back under about 4,400 years ago. After pressure of time and pressure, dirt, gravel, and stones compact, and they make shale and different types of stones. We talked about that. And the geological column, which there is layers of rocks. You guys have been in the Grand Canyon, you know. If you've traveled up through on I-75 going through Tennessee, you know there's layers. Because they cut right through a mountain, you can actually see the layers of different types of rocks. So the flood, lots of animals drowned, and people and their carcasses got buried by the sand. People got buried. And through that, oil, that's where oil comes from. All right, next slide. Ice core layers. Now, once again, can anyone talk about gas? Oh, can you believe how gas? I can't believe it's $3.35. I can't believe it's $4, right? Has anyone ever said that before? I can't believe I'm spending $400 a month on filling my gas tank up. As soon as someone says that, go, yeah, either can I. Man, isn't that crazy? I wish I had my own dinosaur squished in my backyard, and then I could get my own oil from it, right? I wish I could just tap into that oil reservoir underneath the ground, because that's all you have to say. What are you talking about? Well, according to scientists, scientists say their theory is it's 20 billion years old, but they also believe that oil should be popping out of the ground. So we should have oil everywhere. This is awesome. We shouldn't be running out of oil. Why? Because it's everywhere. There's your end right there. As soon as it talks about gas, hey man, go keep a picture of that dinosaur with the Sinclair oil right on your phone. Go check this out. This guy believes that all the oil comes from dinosaurs. Isn't he wacky? He's a multimillionaire, but he believes it. He must know something. Okay, ice core layers. Here's the next thing. Everybody have ice cubes in their drink? Has anyone ever skated on ice? Anyone ever been something cold before? Just trying to give you ideas on the who, what, where, and how. How do I get this into a conversation? The Denver National Ice Core Laboratory. Anyone ever been to Denver? Anyone know who the Denver Nuggets are? Denver Broncos. Here we go. I love the Broncos. Oh yeah, there's this place, the Denver Lab. You know what they do? Here we go. They took drill holes in Greenland and the South Pole. The drill holes through the ice, you guys see another picture there. What they do is they drill down, they take core samples, and it's in a long sleeve, it's in a long tube. The deepest hole they've ever drilled is 10,000 feet. The ice core has dark rings. You'll see the dark rings. When they hold up the light, the next picture, Jerry, that's how they save it, right here. When you look at the rings, see the dark rings, light rings, dark rings, light rings? They're all different sizes. Some are thinner, some are thicker. This is a side view of the ice with its backlit. The ice core has dark rings and light rings, just like the rings on a tree. What happens in the summer, it gets warm, and so the ice melts a little bit, and then it gets a clear layer when it freezes, and it makes clear layer of ice. You can see that happen in the winter, right? You can see that happening. If you lived in the course of a winter, you can happen 20, 30 times because it gets really cold, right? You're about to go back where it's really cold, right, Mel? So all of a sudden it snows, right? It snows December 25th. Oh, and it's so pretty. The next day it gets warm and it's slushy everywhere. And then you have it gets clear. And then it freezes again. And then you can start seeing how it gets packed up. It starts packing on top of each other. This is what happens. So in the winter, it does not melt, so the snow presses down, smashed layer slow, and it turns into a milky ice. The snow gets milky white where ice is clear. I'm talking about here's where scientists, evolutionists believe right now. They believe each one of these lines is an annual ring. So they're calling it a ring because it's a ring around the cylindrical tube, right? Cylindrical tube, so it's a ring. They look at each ring and they say, well, that's summer, that's winter, that's summer, that's winter. Because it's hot in the summer and it's cold in the winter. Right? So, on the core sample, they counted when they went 10,000 feet deep, it's the furthest they could go down. They counted 135,000 rings. Light, cold, light, cold, light, cold. They have the tubes there. They broke them down. They don't have a 10,000-foot one. They cut it into pieces and they keep it in the freezer. So the earth, according to them, is 135,000 years old. They just counted the rings. Does that make sense? Right? Each ring represents summer, winter. So there's 135,000 rings, 135,000 years old. It's that simple. That's how they came up with that. Now, in 1942, go ahead, Jerry, next one. These gentlemen went looking for a plane that crash landed in 1942 in World War II in Greenland. These planes went down, and they knew where it was, so back in the early 1990s, they went looking for these planes now buried on top of snow and ice. It went down by the side of a mountain. They knew where the location was. They could beacon it and all that kind of stuff. They have metal, and they did imaging and all that kind of stuff. They went to go find it. Scientists/explorers, 40 years later after the plane went down, they dug it out, and they went down 263 feet of ice. You understand what's happening? So these planes landed on the ground. They ran out of gas. They landed, and then over time it's been freezing. Ice gathered, snow, ice, snow, ice, snow, ice. Okay. It was under 263 feet of snow and ice. Airplanes do not sink on ice. Right? In Michigan, we drive vehicles out on the ice. You go ice fishing, you can drive out on the ice. I've seen some, you guys ever seen ice, is it ice trucking or trucking, that show on TV? Ice truckers go across the lake with a semi. These airplanes that they're talking about were 1/16 of the weight of a semi-tractor trailer. Those tractor trailers aren't sinking in ice. They can go across the ice. So these airplanes did not sink. They landed, ice accumulated because of global warming. That was a little joke. Okay. So 263 divided by 48 is 5.5 feet a year. The deepest hole they ever drilled was 10,000 feet. Core sample, 10,000 feet divided by 5.5 is 1,800 years. So that airplane, according to the ice rings, landed 1,800 years ago. Do you all understand what just happened? You take the 263 feet divided by the same amount of footage that they used to figure out a year, divided by when it went down. If that's how, oh my goodness, this plane landed 1,800 years ago. But when did it land? In 1942. What is testable, measurable, observable? I found a plane. Next slide, Jerry. Here they are going down the 263-foot shaft where they found the plane. Next slide. Here is the plane after they tunneled around it. They're 263 feet down. They found several planes. They tunneled around it. You guys ever make snow forts? You guys remember that? I think, are Mel and I the only ones, and Gene? Well, Scott, you probably did that as a kid too, right? So this is an underground snow fort. They dug out and they brought the snow up and they melted it inside. These are some of the planes that they found. So according to what they found, planes really old. Were planes around 1,800 years ago? So the question, if the Earth is billions of years old, why isn't there more ice on the North and South Pole? Because it would keep building up and 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 building up, according to their theory. So, or how about this? How about this? This is observable, testable, and measurable. If you have ice rings and it melts and it freezes, and it melts and it freezes and it melts and it freezes, it can happen in 6 days. They would say that's 6 years. According to ice rings. You understand what I'm saying? According to ice ringing, that's how, these are scientists, and this is how they were doing core samples. This is how they were telling how old things were. When they would find an animal in the North and South Pole, they would take an ice core sample, boom, they'd hit an animal and go, this animal's got to be 1 billion years old. Look, there's 23 billion ice rings around it. But a little bit deeper, they went and they found an airplane. Once again, this is something, if someone likes airplanes, tell them the airplane story. It's all, why? Because 1 out of 2 people, if you're telling about an airplane, 1 out of 2 people believe in evolution. You've just dispelled evolution. Mississippi mud. Anybody would know it's not a dessert. Mississippi mud. But if it was, I bet you'd be very good. Mississippi mud. Anyone been to Mississippi? How about Biloxi, Mississippi? Great gambling city. I'm kidding. It is, but it is though, isn't it, Scott? Why would you know? Okay, Biloxi, Mississippi. Okay, Betty. Okay. Biloxi, Mississippi is right on the Gulf Coast. I know it there because I was stationed in the Air Force Base. Biloxi, Mississippi. Textbooks are determined to prove the kids on the earth that the earth is billions of years old. The textbooks say that the Mississippi is depositing sediments at the rate of 80,000 tons an hour. Depositing sediments. So where does that be? The Mississippi Delta, as you see, it's in that bottom portion. That's considered the Mississippi Delta. The next slide shows you everywhere throughout the whole country, this whole region, there are networks of rivers going all the way dumping, going from north to south. They're dumping right out in the Gulf. So everything is going towards the Delta in Mississippi. It's a region inside of southern Mississippi. It's called the Delta. And as more sediment, the Delta is actually growing because all this sludge gets dumped down there. You know, that's how they dredge out. You guys know how they dredge out across by Fort Myers Beach and all that stuff? Why? Because the sediment gets pushed out from the Caloosahatchee. So they have to keep on pulling that out. Well, here in the Delta, they just let it expand and let it grow. The only time they dredge it out is for shipping lanes, for the boats. There's 80,000 tons an hour of mud comes to the Mississippi, dumps off into New Orleans in the Delta. So, based on the amount of mud that comes down every year, they say that the Delta probably formed 30,000 years ago. These are in textbooks. So, if the Earth is millions of years old, why isn't the whole Gulf of Mexico full of mud? If it's just been draining for millions of years, why isn't the Gulf? Why do we have the Gulf of Mexico? If it's millions of years old and they know it's observable, measurable, and testable how much mud is getting pushed through there, right? So they know that it's getting pushed through there. Well, I believe there was a flood. I believe there was a flood 4,400 years ago, and it was 30 feet above a mountain, and when everything drained, there was just a rush, and it created these, just like on this beach, when you have these carved little holes in the sand, and all the water rushed out, and it just pushed its way through, and ever since then, mud just keeps depositing, and it's actually slowing down, but it should be filled. The Gulf Coast should be filled, according to that rate. So if someone's from the Mississippi, if someone wants to know about water, someone's from New Orleans, once again, here's the story. The oldest tree. Did you ever go to that? Here's the oldest tree. Isn't that pretty? This is the oldest tree in the world. It's in Southern California. It's a bristlecone pine tree. There's not a lot of cones left, as you can probably see. It's 4,300 years old. The tree is 4,300 years old, confirmed by evolutionists and creationist scientists. 4,300 years old. So if the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have an older tree somewhere? When was there a flood? Huh. And then it took how long for the flood to subside? 13 months and 3 weeks, right? 4,400 minus 100. 1 year minus growth time. The oldest tree that scientists at evolution find that they agree upon is 4,300 years old. It's the oldest tree they can find in the world. It's at the highest elevation. Interesting. If someone's from Southern California, say, hey, have you ever been to the Inyo National Forest? It's I-N-Y-O, Inyo National Forest. Have you ever been there? Why? The world's oldest tree is there. Oh, you're kidding me. No. How old is it? 4,300 years ago. Really? I thought there'd be something much older. Now if there was a flood, everything was wiped out. Pre-ring dating is not an exact science on trees and all those things like that, but this is one thing they agree on based upon the things that they found around that area as well. Okay, Great Barrier Reef. Anyone been to the Great Barrier Reef? Who wants to go to the Great Barrier Reef? Who has no idea what the Great Barrier Reef is? Where is the Great Barrier Reef? Australia. It's in Australia. Next slide, Jer. Isn't that cool? Go ahead, next one. That is just so cool. The Great Barrier Reef. It's a giant coral growing underwater. It's the largest coral reef in the world, right outside of Australia. During World War II, the reef was damaged and destroyed by ships and anchors and bombs. Environmentalists went out there to make sure it grew back properly, so they cleaned it up and took things away. They've been watching this grow for over 20 years. After watching it grow for 20 years, they decided that the Great Barrier Reef is less than 4,200 years old based upon its growth rate. Measurable, testable, observable. They measured it, tested it, and observed it for 20 years to see the growth rate of the Great Barrier Reef. And they thought it was about 4,200 years old. It's old. But if the Earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger reef somewhere? Right? What's the barrier reef in? What type of water? Salt water. Wouldn't you think there would be a big barrier reef? Well, if the whole Earth was flooded, right? Well, there should be bigger reefs everywhere, right? Does anyone agree with that? Was the Earth salt water at the time of Noah? See, this is great. See? We have salt water down here. Talk to people about salt water. You've ever seen someone come out after they drink some salt water? Right? They're just choking, they're vomiting, they're gagging. All of a sudden, now you can talk about the Great Barrier Reef. You can talk about salt water. It's all here. So the Great Barrier Reef, this is the largest Great Barrier Reef. It's the largest reef that they've ever found. They approximate it 4,200 years old. Why isn't there one older? Because I believe there is a flood. Do you guys see? This is all going back. There's so many different hits that you can get from people who scuba dive, who've been to Australia, who vacation. Hey, I'm going on vacation. Oh, where are you going to vacation at? I don't know. You should go to Australia and look at the Great Barrier Reef. Why? Because the Great Barrier Reef, it's the oldest reef. It's been out there. Really? It's 4,200, 4,300 years old. Really? Yeah, the scientists have proven it. It's measurable, testable by the years of growth. There we go. And you guys, I'm not trying to be patronizing. It's just that easy to start a conversation with someone. Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls. Anybody been there? I love Niagara Falls. Keep going, Jerry. I think I got a couple shots of that. This is a helicopter shot of this. As you can see, that's coming down from the west end. Okay, then Jerry, another one. And this is from the south end going. See the erosion? So you have the erosion taking place in the upper right-hand side as it's facing the south, as the water's coming down from north to south, but then it starts going west. That whole area that's coming down has been eroded 7 miles. You can tell because of the ridge and where the old water lines used to be. So it just keeps going up. It keeps going up, and it's eroded away. And we can study erosion. They know what erosion is, and they've studied that. But in the textbooks, you'll see pictures of Niagara Falls and how it's eroding. All waterfalls eat away at the banks, and they slowly erode. The Canadians actually built a concrete wall on their side, on the northwest side, so it doesn't erode on their side. They could care less about the United States. All right. So they said that Niagara Falls has been eroding away, not in existence, but it started eroding away about 10,000 years ago. How do they know that? Well, they can stand there and watch it erode. Not for 10,000 years, but they can watch rocks break off. They know it's eroding. To the museum, 4.7 feet a year, nearly 5 feet a year. In 1930s, they diverted most of the water for hydroelectric power. The stats on what this really a nighttime view in the falls or back falls has only moved 7 miles. Falls, all the textbooks, it's measurable, testable, observable, that the Earth is billions of years old way to Lake Erie by now. Why doesn't it just keep eroding? If that's the erosion that's taken place in just that short period, why isn't it all? I believe that the Earth was covered with water 4,400 years ago. And there was and eroded that thing away very quickly. Here's the same thing. You can talk to them about Niagara Falls. Say, oh, which one? Are you guys finding this kind of boring tonight? Okay, all right. So I know you got kids next door, so. Okay. A picture for this. You know what the ocean looks like? Okay. When it rains, 30% of the water rains into an ocean. I picked this one because, hey, we live where we live. It brings in minerals and salts. 30% of water runs into the ocean. The oceans are getting saltier every day because the water washes the salt in and evaporation takes place and it leaves the salt behind. When you guys sweat, who sweats here? Some people don't like to sweat, so they just avoid it. Okay. I'm just telling you, some people don't like to sweat. My wife, Callie, it was funny. So like last couple weeks, we've just kind of been doing like this workout thing, kind of really. And the other night we were going, and she goes, you know what I hate? And I go, what? She goes, to sweat. And I said, she goes, exercising stinks. Because sweating's involved in it, right? Well, what happens around your mouth after you've perspired? Salt, why? The water's evaporated out of your body. It leaves salt behind. This is the same thing. So water gets evaporated back up, right? So when it's raining, how come it doesn't taste like salt? We live right on the ocean. Because salt is being left behind, water gets evaporated. What is water? What's water? What's the symbol for water? What's the symbol for salt? NaCl, very good. All right, sodium chloride. So rain is not sodium chloride, it's water. Water rains, 30% of the rain ends up in the ocean, taking minerals and salt into the ocean. Salt now is stored in the ocean. Water gets evaporated, just the water alone. It leaves the salt behind in the ocean. So the oceans today are 3.6% salt. 3.6% salt. That's what the ocean is. Very easily, according to rain charts, they said this could have happened in 5,000 years. 3.6. They estimate it's taken about roughly 5,000 years. Sounds pretty close to 4,400. Skeptics, atheists, and agnostics all the time say during Noah's flood, what did Noah drink if he's out there in the salt water, and how did the freshwater fish survive? They're assuming it was salt water back then. They're assuming it was salt water. The soil and the things on the earth are eroding into the oceans. If he created salt water at 3.6%, you know how salty the ocean would be right now? You and I would be floating on top of the water. I would order dinner and it would float on the tray on top of the water. That's how bad it would be. You guys ever been to the Dead Sea? Gene, you've been to the Dead Sea? Scott, you've been to the Dead Sea? You guys know what I'm talking about, the Dead Sea? It's over in Israel. Guess what? It's salt. Everything floats. You cannot drown. People would try to drown. You can't drown. It's impossible. My parents were over there a couple times. They have trays of food floating on top with food sitting on it. Just a dinner tray. It's just sitting on top of the water. It's full of salt. So what did Noah have? The water wasn't salty. Well, how do we know that? Well, we also know that, did you know that there hasn't always been saltwater alligators? They're freshwater. They've adapted to salt water. Proven, testable, observable. How does that happen? Did you know that there are laboratories that have taken fish, freshwater fish, and saltwater fish, separate tanks? They've added salt to one and taken the salt out of the other over a period of time, and all the fish survive. They adapt. They didn't evolve, they adapted. They just take less salt in their diet. How many have less salt in their diet today? Why? High blood pressure, right? Have you adapted? I can't live without my salt. Right, Gene? It's an Elliott thing, right? We always say growing up, it's like when I first got married, all the Elliots, they just take a salt to anything. They don't even taste it. They just take a salt thing, right? They have a salt lick, and they would just take salt, and they would just put salt on it. It's like, if there's salt there, it's like, whoa. So it's like, some people just love salt, but you adapt. Fresh water, you can look back and study this. You can look at an animal show, water alligators and saltwater and freshwater alligators. They're different, but they've adapted. They all used to be freshwater. Scientists have proven that. That's in there. So the last one I'm going to do tonight is stalactites and stalagmites. And see that? You know what those are? Those two words right there, stalagmites, they're hanging down from, that's a cave. Okay, go ahead, Jerry, show the other one. You guys ever seen this place? It's in Branson, Missouri. I've been to that one, and I have no idea why I went in there. My mom wanted to go. And it's much brighter in this picture than it actually is in there. It smells, and I had to carry Paige the whole time. And it was moist, and it was hot. And I don't have fond memories of that place. And they build boardwalks everywhere, and they tell you not to touch anything because it's billions of years old. They do. They tell you, don't touch anything. Why? It's billions. The guide said it's billions of years old. Please do not touch any of the stalactites and stalagmites, or however you want to go. So, the next picture. This is a very famous cave in Guadalupe Mountains in southern New Mexico. It's the Carlsbad Caverns. They're the most colorful, beautiful, large. It's awesome. They will tell you it took 250 million years to make that cavern. They says it takes 1,000 years to grow 1 inch. Okay, these are scientists now, right? Scientists say those things that are growing right there, it takes 1,000 years to grow 1 inch. How long does it take a hair to grow? Is a half inch a month? 3/4? I don't know why I know that, but it's okay. So, but they're saying 1 inch every 1,000 years is how long it takes that to grow. Now, next picture, Jerry. What's this? Lincoln Memorial. Shut down, unfortunately, right now, but the Lincoln Memorial. Underneath the Lincoln Memorial, go ahead, Jerry. This is the support structure underneath the Lincoln Memorial. This is what's supporting. This is what's holding it up. It's actually several stories underneath. It's built down. See those things hanging down? You know what those are? Yeah. Some are over 50 inches long. Some are over 50 inches long. And it takes 1,000 years to grow 1 inch. The Lincoln Memorial was built in 1922. Did you know this is still in textbooks? That it takes 1,000 years for a stalagmite to grow 1 inch. The same kids will then go the next day and they'll go on a field trip to Washington, D.C., and they'll go, hey, isn't that one of those stalagmites? Well, yes, it is. Didn't we learn yesterday it's 1,000 years per inch? Yes, we did. That's 50 inches long. Yes, it is. When was the Lincoln Memorial built? 1920. Do you guys see how easy it is to minister to someone? You can witness to someone just that quick. If they like history, if they like United States history, hey, you're underneath the Lincoln Memorial? Did you know that there's a structure like this that you can walk underneath and actually see? You can actually take a tour of that. And you can actually see them hanging down. That would be the first question. I was a smart aleck as a kid. I would have been the first question I would have asked. There are 6, and I'm sorry I didn't have the pictures for it, but there are 16-inch stalactites growing off electrical conduit boxes. You know what a conduit box is? Off the side of a building, all stuff like that, high up. They have 16-inch stalagmites growing off of that. When did we have power? When did we get power? I'm saying this because we live in Fort Myers. Who lives, was it the 20s? Who discovered electricity? Okay, he lives down the street, right? Or he did. He lives down the street. So this is one of these questions. Hey, Thomas Edison, you want to go to Thomas Edison's house this Christmas and walk around and see the lights? My parents are in from out of town. I would love to. Let's go. as you're walking around. Can you repeat that, Mr.? Oh, that's interesting. Hey, why do they have stalactites on top of electrical conduit boxes? What are you talking about, son? Just curious. Because they grow every 1,000 years they grow an inch, and there's 16-inch ones growing off. When did he create it? Oh, that was not even 100 years ago they created power. Well, then how can you have 16-inch long stalactites that should be 16,000 years old on something that was just created 100 years ago? Remember, 1 out of 2 people you're talking to, if you said that in a group on a tour, can you imagine? Now you just spoke to 30 people. You guys, I'm talking, now you're not trying to show up the guy who's guiding, but guess what? He's just reading a script. Right? Just like a school teacher. They're just reading a script trying to keep their job. But all of a sudden you throw it out there, cast that seed into people's minds and go, hey. So, okay, did this help at all? Just okay. So who, what, where, when, how am I going to do this? Throw this online. Hey, I love Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison created power. Try to do it a funny way. Try to approach people in such a way where you're not banging them over the head. But there's, I think, about 10 hits that we did tonight, just two or 3 paragraph type hits. People who are really into electricity and power, engineers, get into one thing. People who want, like, the Lincoln Memorial and get all the stuff about Washington, D.C., they'll get so excited about that stuff, and bam, you have a shoot in with somebody to start casting the seeds out of evolution. All right, so next week we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to give you more stuff, and then we're going to have like a bunch of people here. We're going to be, no, seriously, we're going to have a bunch of people. We're going to start praying over people when we go out, because we need to start, regurgitating is probably not the best word. Taking it in and, regurgitating it back out. All right, let's take an offering and close. Father, I thank you for your word, and I thank you that you've left all this stuff that we can just look at and say, oh my goodness, these people are wrong. I mean, it's just wrong, and the enemy is leading people astray. People do not want to believe the truth. People don't want to believe the truth. We look at an old tree, and the oldest tree we find is 4,300 years ago. We find that the Great Barrier Reef, as they say, it's 4,400 years old. We find all these things, and it's impossible, but the same people who say, well, here's a stalagmite, and it's 10 billion years old, but then we look, and the next day we see it's not true. Father, let us be the agent of change. May we just tell people. May we just get off our comfort zone and be creative in how we present this to people. I pray even for current events, when we hear these, that it actually excites us a little bit in our spirit, man. Not that we get to leave, but we need to get excited about telling other people it's almost time to go. So I just praise you and thank you for your word. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so next week, I'm not going to limit it. It's not going to be limited to just creation science. Some of the quick hits next week, like what we've been doing tonight, some of those quick hits are going to be some end time stuff. You guys, okay? Oh, we're going to rehash end times? No, new stuff, end time stuff. But I want to go over, like, here's 2 or 3 paragraphs, something that just happened in the last week or two, and you can go talk to someone tomorrow about this. And it's not just going to be about war. It's going to be about banking. It's going to be, does everyone have a bank account? I would say 99% of the people that you deal with on a daily basis have a bank account. There's your shoe in to talk to someone. Hey, do you have a bank account? Yeah. Do you know what's going on in the banking industry? Do you know what the Bible says? Right there. There's no limit to who you can talk to. But you have, like I said, but that's the point where it's like I have to open my mouth and just speak it to them. So we should start getting the word out. Right? Okay, the last several pages that's in your handout, I'm not going to probably go over those next week. If you want to read that, about do all scientists believe in evolution? And I broke down, there's actually a passage in John 7 you can read. I put it in the King James because of some of the words that they use. You can look it up in any translation you want. But I gave a description of John chapter 7 and the remaining 3 or 4 pages of your notes on why people won't believe it when you tell them the truth. Why don't people believe you? Like the things I just told you tonight, you can show them a picture of underneath the Lincoln Memorial and they still won't believe it. You can take them there, they'll look at it, and they still won't believe you. Why? Because John chapter 7 lays this out. Jesus was who? Who was Jesus? Son of God. Who was he born of? A virgin. Who was his father? Who raised him? I'm sorry. Earthly father, right? Where was he born? Where was he raised at? Where? Okay. John chapter 7. John chapter 7, it said they didn't believe Jesus because he was supposed to come from here. He was supposed to be born from here. He was supposed to come out of the town of Bethlehem where David was. But he was supposed to be here. He was supposed to be here. He was supposed to do this. They didn't believe him. But they had their facts wrong. So they didn't believe the truth when it came up and they looked at it. John chapter 7 is why people aren't believing creation science. He was the Son of God. He wasn't accepted in his own city. People knew who he was. They said, hey, isn't that the guy we played baseball with? Isn't that the guy this is all John chapter 7. And the Pharisees tried to disqualify him. Everyone tried to disqualify him. That can't be him. Even though he came to them, it says, nah, that's not what it's supposed to look like. So when you start telling people this is what creation science is, what is they go, nah, why? Because they don't want to believe it's true. So just give them the facts, let them figure it out on his own, but that's what those last 3 or 4 pages are about. It's just a breakdown of John chapter 7.